Haney of Comic Book Podcast. I'm Todd, along with Joe. How we doing today, Joe?
I'm doing good, Todd. Feeling good, eating good. I stopped over at the local store, the local grocer, Mart. I picked up a thing of fancy gummies, right?
Ooh, right.
And, typically this is stuff that's saved for After Dark, but it wasn't an idea that I had until after we recorded After Dark,
Right.
So the flavors on these things, right?
Right, because I know the ones you use, and there's two different versions of flavors, I believe. But go ahead.
Okay. These are the exotic fruits.
Ooh.
Okay. And they all have like a funky descriptor with them,
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you got Rubus Raspberry, Queen Pineapple, which I've never heard of, like calling, Queen Pineapple, right? Fuji Apple, Crimson Cranberry, Blood Orange, Asian Pear, Alfonso Mango, which I don't know if that's like a guy or something.
Right.
And Black Currant.
That I've heard before.
Now, see, I think I've heard of a currant, but like I could draw a pineapple. I could draw like pictures, or like I could pick these fruits out of a lineup.
Mm-hmm.
But if you showed me a currant, I'd be 100% guessing.
I would be too. So I'm just kind of looking something up real quick, but I don't know. I don't even know what that fruit is, to tell you the truth.
Right. I thought it was I thought it was more like from the seed or the date family than anything else.
Right. Me too. I was looking to see if black currant was one of the flavors of Jelly Babies, but I can't find it really quick. So, but I was hoping it was, because I know I made you eat a Jelly Baby one.
They're celery flavored.
Yes, they're celery flavored, Spectrox flavored Jelly Babies.
The most popular flavor.
Most potent one too, Joe. Well, would you like to know what we have on the show this week, Joe?
I would, Todd.
All right. QR codes sure are doing their job, Joe.
Oh, my goodness.
New York Comic Con, a 4-day event? Or is it? Royalties, and then TV and movie news. Conventions. The latest edition of Becky's My Walk Down Lois Lane, and that's episode 41 for those keeping track. Episode 41.
I thought next week was 41.
What?
I thought next week was 41.
No, this week is 41.
Oh, okay.
All right. What we read last week, which was Houses of the Unholy, the original hardcover by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, and X Factor #1. What we're looking forward to this week. Todd and Joe have issues where we reread Gail Simone's Secret Six in its entirety, and this time we go off the beaten path with Suicide Squad 67. And then I don't believe we have any TV talk or movie talk, because we're going to be on a break for a little bit, Joe.
Yeah, a little bit of a hiatus, which I think we deserved.
Vacation.
So let's get into the news, starting with Todd's favorite thing, which is the QR codes in the back of the Marvel Comics. Now, I stated, this doesn't directly affect me. It's not happening in the books that I'm reading. And what we saw in Uncanny X-Men last week was just like, whatever, no big deal. And we'll get into it with X Factor this week as well. It was just more of a tease. It's just more of like something that it gives you like, oh, well, here's a path that things are going down eventually, as opposed to whatever. And I'm trying to be as vague because like sometimes it could be spoilery and sometimes it's not really spoilery. This one that we're going to talk about, I guess, is spoilery.
Pretty much. I equate the, like I said, the QR codes at the end kind of the Rip Hunter chalkboard. It's like potential places we're going to go in the next year of these issues. But like you said, the one that we're going to do is not so much that, but big time spoilers, like you said.
Right. And I think you can guess what it is just by what we're talking about. But there was a Iron Fist 50th anniversary book that came out this week. And I guess in the book itself, Danny Rand dies.
Sure.
And then in the QR code, it shows that he comes back to life.
Right.
And we wouldn't be talking about something so heavily spoilered if it wasn't like already out there. Yeah, this is an example of a bad thing of the QR codes doing.
Right. Well, the whole point of the QR codes was, oh, it's a surprise, and we're going to be able to like suppress spoilers because it doesn't go out until we don't hit the on switch until the day the books hit the stores. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean everybody's in the shop. It's, the day at 9:01 if that's when it opens, and immediately, QR codes it. Spoilers, some people take a little bit to get there, and boy, did it travel the internet fast.
Yeah,
this one. So
it's a bummer. I can't imagine at this point Marvel thinks that this was a good idea. I think they immediately knew, and I think there was like the bit where Tom Brevoort tried to come out in front of it,
Right, even though he was a bit jerky about that. Because
he was a little jerky about it. Sure. But yeah, this feels like, as you had mentioned, the thing that they're attempting to avoid, but they're just leaning right into it and having stuff like this. I can't see these QR code things, and this is another one of those deals where, it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other. I know you don't redeem them, but Marvel has like the digital redeem codes in their books for stuff.
Right.
And they've had it for a very long time. And then all of a sudden, a couple years ago, and this had to be at least 6 or 7 years ago, they decided instead of giving you the QR redeem code for the book that you purchased, we're going to give you 3 other unrelated books. Right. And it's the same 3 books in every Marvel title that you buy this month. And it took them it was immediately met with resistance and online negativity. And it took them a little while to right the ship, because these are things that are printed and sent out and, whatever it is. So how quick can Marvel pivot away from the QR codes?
I think because I do believe anything that's not printed, you could just say oh, we're not putting the QR codes in. But if they want that extra page somehow, they have to wait until because you could take something out easier than you can put something in, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I believe, but I don't know. But I do think as we speak, Marvel is literally throwing dirt on these QR codes.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, I don't know if I said it last week, so stop me if I did. Because, I did go off about them that I don't like them. But I do believe, and this is my Charlie from, It's Always Sunny, conspiracy board. I think it's, once again, them trying to get us, Luddites used to the idea of using QR codes and going digital. Because I don't care what anybody says. Every comic company or every company that publishes a book or anything on paper is like, how do we wean these lunatics who want their floppies, wean them to digital so we never have to spend, if we charge $4 for a digital comic, that's all profit, where we have to take the cut and send it to the printer and all that stuff. I'm a firm believer that they're like any little thing that can get us to go in that direction. And people like me just dug our heels in and said, no. And this was another, them realizing, all right, we're going to try it in another couple of years to do something that's going to make people try to move them over to digital. At least that's my opinion and my conspiracy theory.
I'd like to think it's not as ominous or as, I don't even know what the wording I would use for it is.
Machiavellian?
I don't think it's that contrived or that calculated. Right. I definitely think it was somebody pitched this as an idea.
Right.
And somebody's like, that's a good idea. It'll create buzz. It'll be a free thing. And they didn't think it out fully.
Right.
Because they ain't getting me to go fully digital.
Right.
And people of my age and a little bit younger and a little bit older, if they're still collecting comics, they ain't going digital at this point. You need to wait for us to go away.
Right. And we literally need to die off.
Right. We need, we need to go away. You need to either wait for us to die or do such things that completely runs us off.
Yes.
And I don't think that they're in the idea of, well, if we run off X amount of this fan base that has more or less been here for 30 plus years, or all of a sudden, because now there's a QR code that you scan at the end of the book, we're going to get enough digital sales to replace those people? Are we going to get enough new readers to replace those people? Mm-hmm. There's other ways I think that they should be marketing to cater to new readers. And sadly, I just don't think comics has found it yet.
I would agree. Maybe someday they will, but it'll take a bit for me to like change my ways, Joe.
Yeah, it's not from a lack of trying, but I could definitely say that this QR code gimmick feels like a flop.
Yep.
Speaking of things that may not be a flop, you at the beginning of the show there with the news rundown kind of sounded like you were thumbing your nose there that New York Comic Con really is going to be 5 days.
No, I mean, it's always been 4, and San Diego always kind of had a preview night, but it looks like New York's getting an extra day, but not for fans.
Right. So it's a retailer's day where they're going to have exclusive signings and access to exclusive merchandise and so on and so forth. And it looks like, and again, a closed door event and so on and so forth. It's definitely an interesting idea.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me. Did you ever hear like the diamond luncheons and stuff like that?
Yeah, that they would do in like Baltimore and some of the other ones.
In New York and like San Diego, all of them, they did them, but they were much bigger when they had Marvel and DC, because Diamond would be like, oh, we're gonna give the retailers a free dinner or free lunch or breakfast, I forget what it was, before the con, and be like, we're gonna push these products on you that we think are going to be big, or we're at least going to give you a sales pitch. Mm-hmm. And then they would give you random exclusive stuff that you could only get at these diamond dinners or lunch or breakfast or whatever. And they would be covers of a comic, blah, blah, blah. But what's more sought after, and I'm not trying to belittle a smaller comic, but would you rather have the 1 in 500 Batman comic, or the 1 in 500 Spider-Man comic, or the 1 in 500 Department of Truth comic? Or whatever independent, because Diamond doesn't really do it. And I feel this is them trying to like push something bigger with all the companies, because there's not everything isn't distributed under one roof anymore. So they can do this, and DC can throw in, they're like, we could do comics, it's a preview night, or Marvel or whoever, and it's a way to get all the retailers that were going to be there for those events for Diamond, if that makes any sense to what I'm saying.
Right, because as we mentioned, Diamond would be the one that did the luncheons previously.
Right.
This preview night, retailers night at New York, is through Lunar, which is the DC arm. And we talked about the distribution stuff the last couple of weeks on the show here, just how things are being split up. I like that they have the panels available.
Right.
Like Get Your Shop on the News, PR Basics, benefits of collaborating with fellow retailers,
right?
Working with schools and library, and speed networking with comic book retailers.
Right, and fighting the QR code.
Yeah. Now Lunar could say we're the company that doesn't have the QR code, and that makes us better, and everyone can clap and laugh and everything else like this. I got, just as we spoke, talking about the QR codes, they got to try. This isn't it. They're trying. Mm-hmm. These things could be it. Right?
Right.
Obviously, I know our retailer's secret is be the best game in town and run everybody else out of business because they all stink.
Right.
But I don't think that's the option for everyone. And it certainly looks like, how they're like networking with retailers, working with fellow retailers and things like that. I don't think you're going to get a lot of retailers that are going to want to work together,
Right. I mean, they are an interesting bunch, but I don't know. I think they'll go just to because there'll probably be swag, and that's what they'll go for. You know what I mean?
Right. Wow. Now, again, I know that they're saying, obviously the PR basics, that's one thing. Working with schools and libraries, sure, that's a great thing as well. But I think those are stuff that any halfway decent comic book retailer already knows how to do. There should be there should be courses on how to improve your online footprint.
I think there should be a course in how to improve your store accessibility, or like inclusiveness. You know what I mean? Like, to make it a shop everybody would want to go in, if that makes any sense. That's your number one priority for a comic shop.
Right.
Go ahead.
So yeah, that's all I got there.
Mm-hmm.
In a bit of, I guess, sad news, but, obviously it's something that we would want to discuss because it's something that we always mention. Larry Hama is still a working creator in the world of comics. He's worked on a ton of stuff in the 70s and 80s and 90s and so forth. And he has a new Kickstarter, that's coming out of a new book that he's doing called Werewolves vs. Mounties, I think. Mm-hmm. Mounties versus werewolves. I'm not sure what the versus is in order, right?
Right.
But I guess he was lamenting that he doesn't see any money from like all the new G.I. Joe reprints that are out there. This is like, he doesn't see, he gets incentive payments on Marvel stuff, but like, it's real weird on the way that it works. And I guess he's going through some health issues as well.
Right.
Where he's not going to be able to draw as well. And I don't want to get into everything, but he gets into the discussion of the macular degeneration that he has in his hands. That makes it difficult for him to draw and everything else like that. But it's just still a bummer to see a creator like this go through this sort of thing. And, and I hate to say have to go online and beg for people to be like, please support my Kickstarter, because these big things that I did in the 80s, I see nickels and pennies on.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's other people that'll say, well, that's the deal that you signed, and that's great. It is. And I guess Skybound did a deal where they're trying to, they had Larry do a bunch of the signatures on their big G.I. Joe Kickstarter that they did, which raised a crazy amount of money.
Right.
They have Larry doing a separate G.I. Joe series. It's alongside the Energon Universe stuff. So they're trying to give him work and trying to help him out the best that they can. And the way that his Marvel deal works is a little bit strange, because it's only stuff that's published in the United States and not worldwide. And who knows what digital is. But Larry Hama is one of the most unsung creators, I think, of comics, and he doesn't get his due. And this was just a bummer to see come across the news wire,
Right. There's no 80s G.I. Joe without Larry Hama.
Right.
Because I'm not going to go super crazy, because there was G.I. Joe action figures before that. But the ones that are pretty much in the public's psyche is everything that Larry Hama created. So, and I'm with you. It's tough because the deals that they make and times have changed, but man, oh man, I feel like we've discussed this many, many times, that I feel like, especially with Marvel, is they give those older creators those minis and those bits to rehash the characters that they've done a million times, so they don't have to pay them for creating those characters. I mean, it's maybe they'll be quiet if we constantly give them work, but we're not going to pay them for what they done, if that makes any sense.
Right. The thing that we turned into a multi-million-dollar blockbuster, right, that we just took their 6 issues of a comic book and said, that's the storyboard, make this into a movie.
Right. Or any characters that they created, right, because it seems like if we pay them more than the minimum trickle that we give them, then that gives them the opening to sue for creative rights or whatever. I always feel like it's if we give anything, that's their legal excuse. If we give anything, it's giving an inch to their lawsuit if they ever choose to do one. It's keep it, on this side of the fence as much as we can.
Yeah. But that's a bummer. Like I said, if you can support the Kickstarter, mm-hmm, it's something that he says hey, I actually see money from this. Right. And it's got 3 weeks left to go. It hasn't reached its goal. It's a little under halfway there. So, if you're a fan of Larry Hama, you're interested in what the plot line of this thing is, definitely check it out.
Yep.
Very rarely do we do movie and TV news on the news section. We try to stick to comics. But these two news stories, I think, are very directly associated with us in the show, and especially more recently. Yes?
Right.
One would be that it was officially announced that there is not going to be a season 2 of Star Wars The Acolyte.
Right.
And everyone, could point their fingers and all this other stuff, and people point at the budget of this thing and all the other things, and I feel as though the budget on this was no more or less than like Book of Boba Fett, Andor, Obi-Wan, and I could run down the list of all the other Star Wars shows that we had that we've discussed on the show. But I definitely think the online fan backlash to the show kind of helped make that decision a little bit easier for the suits at Disney to not do another season of this show that was very divisive. And I feel unjustly divisive. We can sit here and argue the merits of the show and whether we like the show or whatever.
Right.
But obviously I feel as though this was something that was very strongly derided online unjustly.
So, and I will give a little pushback. I feel that it was, that it was, a lot of it was, but I'm one of them that I said it in our Discord, and I was like, it started out all right for me, but by the time it got to the end, it was a convoluted mess for me. I'm like, okay, I don't understand some of the choices here, the way we went. But the surprising thing for me is to straight up and say it's canceled. Because a lot of these shows, like whether or not they did well, it's like, we're just going to leave it open-ended. With something like The Mandalorian, which was huge when it happened, and Baby Grogu was announced, and blah, 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 Baby Yoda, everybody went crazy. So when the season's over, it's like no-brainer. You're getting a season 2. But they're kind of like, all right, Obi-Wan did okay. You know what I mean? Book of Boba Fett did okay. And we're like, you'll see these characters, or maybe you'll see a season 2, or maybe you'll see this. But literally, The Acolyte's over, a couple of weeks, and just go, no. We're done with this. And I'm like, that's what genuinely shocks me, because even with stuff, and Marvel's the same way, even with stuff like the Marvel TV shows, She-Hulk was divisive.
Yep.
We haven't got a She-Hulk is canceled. We're not getting a She-Hulk 2. It's still open-ended, if that makes any sense. But Acolyte is shut down, and that's the most shocking thing.
Yeah. That's crazy.
It is. So,
and they tried, they did what they could to make it good. And like I said, I think it was good. We talk about this all the time with a lot of these shows, that they feel like this could have been, if there was a better editor in this could have been a good 2-hour, 1 hour, 45-minute movie, as opposed to a 7 or 6 or however many episodes there were, with a recap and a pre-cap and a mid-cap and all these other things to kind of stretch things out.
Yep. How will I ever find out about that little green guy who was in the after credit scenes?
Oh my goodness. I wonder what crazy adventures he'll get up to, but I guess we'll never know.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of people getting into crazy adventures,
right?
Based off the success of the Preacher TV show and the actual success of the Boys TV show, Hollywood came knocking at Garth Ennis's door, and they said, Garth, baby, booby, bubby, what do you got? Let's turn it into a TV show. You got anything laying around that you own? And he pulled out something from Avatar Studios Press, or whatever the publisher is called, by the name of Crossed. Crossed is a violent apocalyptic theme book that ran over 150 issues. Boy, howdy.
Yep.
This goes back to the Three Guys from Nowhere days, iterations of this show.
Right.
Where do you even air this if you make this? And they said that Garth is writing the script for whatever the pilot is going to be as well.
Oh,
right?
Boy, yeah. Where do you air it? Amazon could get away with it. I don't know. I mean, they're gonna HBO maybe they would get it right. They have a history of getting Garth Ennis projects right. I don't know. I know there's been a few suggestions offline to us, but I honestly don't know. But this is one of those books, like you said, goes back to all the way to that iteration of the show. I loved the Garth Ennis run of Crossed.
Yep.
And I'm just going to say this. It has literally one of my favorite wraparound covers ever. And that's the one on the plane with the door open, like, because, the cabin pressure sucking people out. And there's literally one of the Crossed throwing a child out of the. And I remember talking with Matt. I'm like, this cover is ridiculous. I want it. And I bought it and I ended up reading it and I had a lot of fun. And I think, like, if you've never heard of the Crossed or whatever, to me, it would be Walking Dead meets that the Crazies movie is the best way to put it. And I think you can have a lot of fun with it, but it's gonna be over the top, and I want to see how far over the top it's gonna be.
So you say you could have some fun with it. This was not a fun book. Hitman was fun. Even elements early on in Garth Ennis's Punisher was fun. Preacher, for the most part, was a fun book. The Boys, even though, like, it got a little bit too far for me, was fun at its heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel there was any heart or fun in Crossed.
It depends on how deranged you are. I think you don't think horror movies are fun. Your big gore fest movies are fun.
I am, but not all of them are. There's just, and again, you want to go down this road.
I'm just asking.
Okay, there's no fun to be had in Cannibal Holocaust. Nary a smile or a joke across the board from beginning to end on that movie, right?
Right.
Whereas Pieces, there's fun. There's lighthearted moments. There's a joke or two in there. But I don't recall, like, any jokes, or laughter or whatever in Crossed, whereas, like, The Boys was, Garth Ennis's send-up of, popular superhero comics. I feel as though Crossed was Garth Ennis's send-up or takeoff of Walking Dead comics, specifically Walking Dead. So can they spin the TV show to add some fun to it? Sure. But that fun was not in those original books.
Okay, I say things that pop into my head. Fun might be the raw. I call it, like, the ridiculousness of the horror.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that book is ridiculous with the stuff that they do. And I understand, like, the boys had humor in the comic, at least. But I think you can add it where it's the intense blah, 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 and then the ridiculousness of them realize, like, and I'm going to tread very carefully. Do you remember when they were like, oh, there's the Crossed are shooting at us, and they're like, oh, it's okay, they're far away, as long as they don't touch us or bite us or spit on us or whatever, we're going to be fine. And then they realized the way they were, and I'm doing air quote, contaminating the bullets.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't care what anybody says. America's gonna find that ridiculously, like, stupid and funny, even though what the outcome is horrible.
Yeah,
I do think that's the way society's gonna do it, and I do think they're gonna tinge towards that because The Boys has a heavy influence of humor in it, and they're like, well, if that's this guy who did that, copy an A, get an A. Don't make it too much just straight on horror because that's not your style.
Yeah, I definitely feel they're going to have to add lots and lots of yucks to it for it to hit.
I'm going to have to reread it to see if there was many one-liners in it. I forget.
Yeah, those left my collection a long time ago, and now I'm kicking myself, Todd. I could have been a millionaire.
Okay, because we use that app, the CZL or CLZ, app for our stuff, and I have a box of stuff that I was looking to sell that I know I haven't put in the app because I'm looking to sell it, and I think I have a bunch of the Crossed in those boxes, so I literally have to go upstairs when we're done doing this and check so I can retire from podcasting.
I'll remind you when we're done.
Okay.
So there's conventions this weekend, Todd.
Sweet.
There's the Eastern Rim Funny Book and Vintage Con in Baytown, Texas.
I hate the term funny book. That's all I'm
saying.
My mom used to be when, God rest her soul, used to be like, Todd, you and those funny books. And I'd be like, Ma, I love you, but call them that again and see what happens.
See who's laughing then.
Exactly.
John Romita Jr., Barry Kitson, Tom DeFalco are going to be at that one.
Right.
However, this weekend in Toronto, beautiful Toronto, Canada, just a stone's throw away from Minnesota, Fan Expo Canada is taking place.
Right.
Big heavy hitters at this one: Mark Silvestri, Jeff Johns, Scott Snyder, Jason Fabok, Mitch Gerads, Steve McNiven, Nicola Scott. Glad to see her back, and she's got that month of variant covers, I think, coming up next month at DC. Pete Tomasi, Kevin McGuire is going to be there. And if you're attending this show as a fan and you see a homunculus, an 8-foot giant wearing a fiberglass potato on his head with light up blue headphones on him, go tell him I said hi.
There you go. Good friend of the one of us on the show. And if you do go to the show, don't bother Jeff Johns. He's busy finishing JSA while he's on the floor of the show.
No, he's not.
What?
Somebody posted that in the Discord today. Oh, goodness. And I hate going to the Discord while we're recording the show, but I have to do it because you mentioned it. Shout out to J-Pop. Jeff Lemire confirms if the Jeff Johns JSA run doesn't conclude by November, his book will still come out in November. Quote, yes, we're coming out no matter what.
Wow, good. I'm sure Jeff Johns will have it out by then.
I'm sure that's going to light a fire under him. He's like, oh, well, if Jeff Lemire is calling me out online, I better work harder.
Right. I have a feeling he's like, well, if it's coming out no matter what, why should I finish?
Oh, that gives me so much more time.
Oh, the pressure's off, Joe. I feel so free.
Oh, my goodness. But no, don't bother Jeff Johns. Again, he's a nice man. He does a lot of good comic book work. It's just, JSA is not the priority these days, I guess. I don't know.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Links to the conventions, of course, will be in the show notes, along with information about soon-to-be-named network at soon-to-be-named-network.tumblr.com. Anytime any of the folks' shows go live, of course, you could find them through your podcatcher of choice. You could find them at their own individual websites. But you could also go to the one-stop shop for all the shows, soon-to-be-named-network.com, soon-to-be-named-network.tumblr.com, not .com, not the regular .com. It's so entrenched in my head. I don't have it in the notes anymore, but it's stuck in my head. I'm not editing that out. But that includes shows like this that you're listening to right now: Longbox Heroes, Longbox Heroes After Dark, Puzzle Warriors 3, Profane Arguments, Wings on Wings, Porch Talk, We Need Wrestling, Final Wrestling Place, At Odds with Wrestling, and just returning this past week, Hayabusa Speed.
Mm-hmm.
Spotify exclusive.
Sure.
To quote Ed, I'm too pretty to figure out how RSS feeds work.
Or doesn't have the time to contact you.
I've been begging him to do it since Thursday, Todd. I almost called you Adam. I've been begging him. I apologize. I take it back.
Right.
I've been bugging him since Thursday to just please let me walk you through it. Please send me your login so I could do it. And he just keeps telling me no.
Good for him. I hope it's a bit, but what do I know?
Everything's a bit with Ed.
Mm-hmm.
But anytime anybody from our shows show up on other shows, we let you know. I forgot to mention it last week. We mentioned it the week before it came out. It actually came out this past week. But Becky of My Walk Down Lois Lane appeared on another show called Freakquels.
Mm-hmm.
It's Freakquels, which freak, F-R-E-A-K, and quills like sequels. I thought it was free, F-R-E-E, quills, Q-U-I-L-L-S. But she was on with the host of the show to talk about Scream 3, of all things.
Yep.
So definitely go check that out. Go check out Becky in her element, talking about things other than what we have her talk about on here. And I say we have her. She enjoys talking about it. We just give her an outlet to do so. And be sure to check out our friends and the stuff that they're up to in and around the internet. Go check out Mike Sterling's blog over at progressiveruin.com. Go check out our friend Kevin's blog over at helionsteam.com. He just got done with a nice birthday weekend with his son at the American Dream Mall, and I'm not going to do the impression.
Okay.
Go check out Rick Williams, the Chop Shop, over at freekaratechops.storeenvy.com. Go check out Jason Sandberg's Jupiter on his Indiegogo page. Go check out Chris Runt's Battle Monsters over on his site, fortressofcomicnews.com. Be sure to check out our friend Davey of the band Cave People, his self-published books over at cavedomaincomics.com. And go check out, if you do not have a good comic book store in your area, or any comic book store in your area, let our store be your store. Comics on the Green. I have the Facebook page linked up. Dave, let the folks know what is coming up new this week, when the new books arrive, when the store opens, when the final order cutoff date is for books, and go sign up for the Mail Kahimp mailing list.
Yes.
If you don't have Facebook, you don't have social media, everybody's got an email address, right? Mm-hmm. Go sign up for the Mail Kahimp mailing list, and he said that there's going to be like special deals and discounts if you're on that list. So if you're local, cool. If you sign up for the mail order subscription service and you're getting your books mailed to you weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, maybe that'll help, right?
Yeah.
But you'll definitely have a chance to get a sketch on the package from our good friend Becky, who we're going to turn things over to now for My Walk Down Lois Lane.
Welcome back to My Walk Down Lois Lane. Last week we talked about Superman 215 from 1969. Dimension Master and Chameleon Queen killed Lois and left Superman a single father to 5-year-old Laney, and then began to psychologically torture him by making him think that Lois was still alive, only to be killed by Lex Luthor and Brainiac. Because you fight Superman properly, you don't do any of this psychological nonsense. So let's carry on with part 2. Laney has been snooping through the Fortress of Solitude. The robot butlers have had a hard time keeping up with her, running around, setting fires, and touching everything, and Superman returns home just as Laney opens a bunch of boxes marked Do Not Touch, and accidentally transports herself off-world and through dimensions. She's 5, she can't read. Superman follows her, and he lands in South America to find his daughter punching out leopards. I love this little girl. He takes her to this dimension's Fortress of Solitude so he can find a way home. He checks this Earth out of curiosity and sees that there's a Lois Lane, alive and single. This Lois is just as nuts. She's taken experimental breathing underwater formulas and fighting a giant octopus in a shipwreck. Her blatant disregard for safety gives Superman hope for love, as he rescues her and immediately proposes to her, with her saying yes, because she's been waiting for Superman to ask for so long. This is a mess. As he flies off to make wedding arrangements, our Superman finds that Superman and explains how he ends up on this Earth. Superman 2 is furious that he proposed to Lois, not because he loves her. He finds her gross, and now he has to marry her when he has no intention to, so Superman number 1 better think of a way to get him out of this. The plan is Prince and the Pauper. Superman number 1 marries Lois and then springs his daughter on her after the wedding, because that's how you do it. And Superman 2 goes to the Loisless Earth so that he can fight crime in peace without her nagging, and the issue ends with everybody happy. So this issue costs like $4, and I bought it because of Laney and the Chameleon Queen. As we know, DC reported Superman was selling around 800,000 copies around this time, but did you know comic companies had salesmen whose job was to push products onto stores? For example, Charlton reportedly had about 15 salesmen, but DC had 150. So 150 salesmen drove to every nook and cranny of this country to push DC Comics in every mom and pop place imaginable. This explains why there are so many copies of Silver Age DC titles like Lois, Superman, and Action Comics. It also explains why they don't cost anything, so I highly recommend finding Superman 215 and picking it up if you can. So tune in next week for some more.
Thank you very much, Becky. And again, of course, we wrap up the tormenting of poor Superman and all these alternate universes. You know, there even in a million different universes, Superman only has eyes for Lois, right?
Yeah, and Lana and Lori Lamaris, but that's it.
That's it. Just those three across many, many, many Earths. Now, the thing that I was most fascinated about is those reps, the sales reps that would go to the store. The way that Becky made it sound was, especially during this time, which was like the late 50s, early 60s when these books were coming out. I want to say that it sounds like they may have been shaking down comic shops or newsstands to put Superman books on their shelves. Right. But it certainly sounds like DC was employing an army of 150 goons.
Hired goons.
To go force newsstands to make sure they had Superman and Superman family books on their shelves.
So, yeah, what would you do if they didn't buy? Well, I'd go in there and I'd get them in a hammerlock and I'd push their face into that Lois comic and say, "You got to buy, baby, times are tough."
Oh, listen, I don't know if that's how we sell things up here. You tell me if I brought like a Superman comic that had a tank on it, you'd sell that too?
Yep. Oh.
One person's going to enjoy that. I like that. That's okay.
Right.
All right. Hey, let's get into what we read from this past week, Todd. Where would you like to begin?
I would like to start with Houses of the Holy by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillip. As I said before, was a original hardcover, as they have that deal at Image.
Houses of the Unholy.
Houses of the Unholy. I'm thinking of the Led Zeppelin album, which does confuse me when I say it. So Houses of the Unholy. This is basically about a character named Natalie Burns, who, we find out her history as the book goes on. It kind of starts out with her. She's, trying to get somebody away from a cult, one of those people, not a deprogrammer, but so much as she gets them away, and things go sour, gets grabbed by the cops, and an agent named Agent West shows up. And we find out that she, when she was younger, was part of, what would you call it, the Satanic Panic. She was one of them who said that terrible things were done to her. There's this group of people, and through a series of events, the people who were in this small group, the kids, they're being bumped off now, and he's trying to figure out if it's her, or, either way, if it's not her, I'm going to save her, and we're going to figure out this mystery. And as it goes on, we get a bunch of people who it could be, a lot of suspects as it goes from, people who she's ruined family members to like a family member of her own, because this whole situation might have ruined their life. And it goes, who could it be? And basically we get the whole story of how it happens and how it interweaves, because it's a mystery, and that's the most important. I feel we always have to be very, we have to spoiler free, because that's the whole point, trying to figure it out. But I will say, I love Ed Brubaker and I love Sean Phillips. This was one of the weaker books they've done for me. Like, it might be maybe my least favorite of the stuff they did, because I felt the way it went, all the characters that it could have been, who it was, and then we kind of find out who it is, and I'm treading lightly here. I'm like, oh my God, I feel like it's all very convoluted. And then the ending that we do get, that I don't want to mention too much, it was unfulfilling to me. I mean, I liked it, but I was like, I like these things way better. I like Reckless way better. I like Criminal way better. I like, a lot of the other stuff. This one just kind of left me flat. I don't know how to explain. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it.
I disagree with you.
Okay.
And I think it's because, a lot of the stuff that Ed Brubaker has done have some small basis in reality. Mm-hmm. Like a true story. We go back to Criminal, the last run that he did on Criminal, where the first story is based on the story of Ricky Dozan bringing professional wrestling back to Japan in the 50s, right?
Right. Or there was the one with the comic convention and how there was a creepy creator and all that stuff. That was a good one too.
So a lot of those times where he does that, it's a story that he heard or something that he researched or something that he whatever. Mm-hmm. But the source material here, the Satanic Panic stuff, is something I know very intimately. This is a news story that I know a lot about. Granted, I was a little too young when it was happening. It was on the West Coast. So, like, news didn't travel the same way that it does today, that it did in the early 80s. But this was a story that by the end of the 80s, it was something that was known. And then by the time, like, the 90s and the internet age rolls around, this was something that I was very obsessed with. And, like, my peer group was in high school as well.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to take that real-life story that I'm very familiar with and create a fictional narrative out of it, I thought was ingenious. I thought he did a really good job of it. And I thought the mystery parts of it were good. With Natalie, you know, when they go and as Todd mentioned, like, there was the 6 kids. She was one of the 6 kids. And a bunch of the kids are being killed off. So that's why the guy who is the FBI comes and says, well, you know, you'll be able to help me. And the book does a good job of oscillating a little bit between, like, is this like, in the context of the story, was there really a satanic element, or did they all just make it up, or did they make it up and, like, almost Department of Truth-esque, where enough of them believed it that it became true? And Natalie in the book itself kind of analyzes it in a way of saying, like, okay, it didn't happen, but it affected me in a way that it's haunted my nightmares to this day. So it became real to me in that way. And obviously, yes, if you don't have the same relationship, knowledge, length of time, whatever, with the source material like I do, I could see where you're coming from, that you didn't like it as much as some of the other stuff. But I really like this one. Like, it's sitting here in the office, and my wife came in and she, like, picked it up. And I'm like, you should read this. Like, you'll love it. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I will say, because yes, as you say, I'm very unfamiliar with it at that time, even in the 80s, you know, because I'm slightly older than you. So I didn't hear much about it at the time. I did hear the names for bands like Kiss and AC/DC, like that stuff. And I always laughed at it, if that makes any sense. But I never had that. And then we're hitting the resurgence of it. So, like, it never permeated my life. Like, I didn't even know that's what it was called until Department of Truth. If, like, that there was a phrase for it. I knew the bare bones of it, but so by the time I was like, okay, and now there's the resurgence of it from this to other shows to, like, I think the most famous one, like, not the most famous one, but the most popular one recently would be the latest season of Stranger Things. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of did it. So I'm of the mind of, I'm already burned out on this topic. Yeah.
Okay.
Department of Truth did it too. So I'm like, okay, it never wowed me, never really knew about it, but now we're here again. Like, this is the 5th story of it, and they all just seem to kind of be the same to me because it was never real. You know, I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to explain, but it didn't work for me. But like I said, I'm more of a Fade to Black guy when it comes. That was the one that he did. That was in the Hollywood one.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing that he's done.
No, the fade out. The fade out.
I'm sorry, I'm saying Fade to Black. That's because I'm thinking about Metallica from Stranger Things. But yeah, so that's my take. I'm not saying it's a bad book. It just wasn't a book for Todd, if that makes any sense.
I get you. Obviously, we were coming at it from different angles. Mm-hmm. You know, there was what was the one? And again, I don't want to turn around and look at the bookshelf here, but there was the one that it was more of a satanic element to it, but it was like taking place at Hollywood parties and stuff.
Was that Fatale?
No, it was one of the more. And I apologize. I'm turning away.
Yep.
Used to look.
You sound tinny when you do that.
Yeah. I almost swore.
I know. It's my gift.
I do it. It's in the back of the flippin' book. Hang on. He has the bibliography gimmick in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's killing me that I can't remember the name of it. But that was the one that I felt was the weakest.
Okay.
And again, I'm just grabbing the book here. It's like just far enough away that I got to like scramble here, you know?
No, I'm with you. I'm looking through his bibliography online too. Because he's done a lot of stuff, Joe.
Yeah, he's done a couple Two Tree things.
Was it no? What one did you say was in the Hollywood parties? I think it was Fatale, man.
No. Hang on. I'm looking at it right here. I thought Fatale was okay. And again, the title of it is Night Terror? Night Fever. Night Fever.
Okay.
The print on it is so small you can't see what it says, right?
Mm-hmm.
Night Fever. I think that was maybe the weakest one. And I think we talked about this as well, where the previous one, Where the Body was good, but because it got like so kind of far up its own, you know what, in regards to like the layout and the map, and where we're supposed to know where everything is happening in that little cul-de-sac community.
Okay. Yeah, and now I'm just sorry, my brain Night Fever went to the one I would call it. What was the Stanley Kubrick movie that they did?
Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, it's a very Eyes Wide Shut in Europe kind of thing. But yeah.
See, I think that was the weakest one that he's done of the original graphic novels.
Gotcha.
But you be the judge. Go check this one out. Like I said, I'm high on it. Todd's not so high on it. You be the judge. You be the tiebreaker.
Fair enough.
So the other book that we both read from this past week was X Factor #1 from Marvel Comics, written by Mark Russell, with art by Robert Quinn. The mutants are back with a vengeance. This is a government-sponsored team of mutants led by Angel with Havoc on the team. Maybe you know Feral, right?
Right.
Maybe you don't know some of the other folks on the team, but it really don't matter when the book is all said and done.
Mm-hmm.
We're introduced to Roger Broderick, who's the government guy who assembles this team and puts them out front and center. And a lot of the mutants that are like not superpowered mutants, but are just mutants in general, are kind of not keen on a team that's right alongside the United States government, flying the flag and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he sends them off on their first mission, and that's Dark Star, who's the Soviet mutant, and she has her team. So, they're tapping into some like Cold War elements here, United States versus Russia sort of stuff. And you have the more deep, like X branded stuff where Havoc is still with Polaris. Polaris is questioning Havoc's motives for joining the team in the first place. And Havoc kind of says, like, well, listen, I know the team may not have the best intentions, but I'm not going to be able to change who and what the team is from the outside. Maybe I could do it from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where they're leading you to go with the book.
Right.
That's not where the book goes. Now, you and I have been reading Mark Russell stuff for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're a little bit more, I don't want to say forgiving, but we know what a Mark Russell book is going to bring.
Right. We're Mark Russell pilled.
Yeah, there you go. And I know there was some folks, privately in the Discord and other people publicly that were saying that this is just a knockoff of the Peter Milligan, Mike Allred X Factor. Or
X-Static.
Well, X-Force into X-Static, where they didn't want to name things after stuff that was named after Rob created stuff, right?
Right.
Now, I will say, if you know what, I'm not going to tell you what that book is, but if you know what that book is, spoiler for X Factor #1, but I think a lot of the difference there is you have mainline X characters in this book where you did not have them in that book.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's like a huge difference between the two. I liked this. It's been a long time since Marvel has done a book like this. Mark Russell has done a thing here or there for Marvel. He's primarily wrote DC stuff, the Wonder Twins book, what's it, One Star Squadron most recently.
Yes.
He's done a lot of his own independent stuff here and there that Todd and I consume and love it. It's really good stuff. I like this book, but I definitely can see why someone else may not like it. If you're not a Mark Russell, I don't want to say apologist, because it's not like what he's doing is bad, but he definitely has a style that I think is a little bit different than what your typical X reader would be interested in.
Right. Now, and because I had a conversation with someone at the comic shop today about this book, because they wanted to pick my brain. They might have been someone who had these feelings that you were talking about. And he proceeded to explain to me how this book was like that book, with like the beats that it hits. And I'm like, okay, I could see how you're not, and by you, I mean them, a fan of that, because to you, it's rehashing. But I never read that book, so I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, but it is in my brain because they put it there. I told them that. I said, kind of made me look at the book different. It made me go into a book with expectations for a book that I didn't have expectations for. So it kind of tainted a little bit, but I really liked it. The only problem at any point that I would have with this book, because I had fun with it. I liked the way it kind of twisted on itself. I liked the fun of the parody of it. I kind of called this book the Jersey Shore meets an X book, because that's what it is. We're trying to get people to social media like us, blah blah blah, with their click clock, Joe, or whatever.
If I have a lament about the book, that's the only one.
Right. That never bothered me, because I love when they do the names with the serial numbers filed off. But someone like, was it Darkstar, who was the X person for X term? Or whatever her name was.
Yes.
I feel like I don't know if this is a new character or somebody I should know, if that makes any sense. There's bits with this, and they come out of Krakoa with like people with the mutants, the bits that they do, that they go, especially like with Polaris and Havoc, where they're discussing, I feel like mutants now have to go by, and especially reading Gail Simone's issue, they have to go by their new name, if that makes any sense, because Polaris made the point of saying, my name isn't that, it's Polaris. And Havoc goes by his, Christian name. And I'm like, I feel like this is all stuff maybe I should know, and I should know who Darkstar is, but I don't, and I don't know if that's written that way, that you're supposed to not know it, or because I haven't read an X book in 30 years. That's why I don't know it. So I feel a little lost at times, but I still love the book. That's not a knock on it. That's on me, because I'm in my head. But I enjoy this book. I enjoy the creative team, Quinn and Russell. Like you said, I'm a Quinn fan too. Loved his Lone Ranger drawing. When I was in the art game, tried to get a Lone Ranger sketch off him, but it wasn't possible.
Was this who was on the Lone Ranger book when Mark Russell did the Lone Ranger book?
Yeah, the artist.
Get out of town. What a weird like thing of circumstances that they do a Lone Ranger book together and then they do this book together.
Right. At this time he was going by, I don't know if he was going by Bob Q, just Q, no Quinn.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of what it was. And so, like I said, yeah, I love this book. I don't want you to think that's a knock on it. That's more in my head, that is the mystery going to unfold as we go, or is this something that I should know because I wasn't reading the X books beforehand? Otherwise, having a blast. It's a fun, goofy X book that I did not think they would go right out of the gate with that feeling. I figured they were going to try to, prop up the X book as the X books as what they once were, and not do anything new and different. And that's the biggest surprise out of it, and it's a happy surprise.
And I think it's a smart idea to have these X books all have their own separate identity, so that you can get people that like you and I that are going to follow a creator, that if this book, X Factor, read just like Gail Simone's Uncanny, I could easily drop this book. Like, why am I reading like two of the same book, essentially, just with different faces on everyone?
Right. I gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely check the X Factor book out. As Todd and I, longtime Mark Russell fans, and of all the Mark Russell stuff that we talked about, Traveling to Mars, maybe like our favorite book of last year, even though it ended this year. But you get it.
No, definitely, and one of my favorite books in a long, long time.
Yeah,
that book spoke to me. Give Traveling to Mars a try, man.
For sure. So that's what we read this past week. Let's get into what we're looking forward to coming out this week. If you head over to longboxheroes.com every Tuesday around noon Eastern time, we put up the poll post, which is a link to all the books that are coming out this week. Whether you get your books in print, whether you get them digitally, whether you get them sent to your home, be forewarned, be forearmed, know what's coming out this week. Todd and I attempt to guess what the other is most looking forward to coming out this week. Todd is currently in the lead over me with one correct guess.
Yes. And I'm looking over your list and my list, and we're pretty much neck and neck on our lists. Is the book you're looking forward to most, and I may not pronounce this right, Petra number 1?
It's not.
Okay.
It's number 2. Like, that's number 2 on the list.
Right.
But the book I'm most looking forward to coming out this week is Nightwing 117.
Okay.
And is Nightwing 117 the book you're most looking forward to coming out this week as well?
It is. It is.
Yep. It was a coin flip because when I'm like, oh, is Patrick going to be one of those books that Todd has to ask me about and I have to like subterfuge him on it? Mm-hmm. And then I saw it on your list. I'm like, oh, Todd knows what it is. I don't need to explain it to him, right?
Right. I just thought that for some reason James Robinson stuff might have jumped out. You know what I mean?
So that's the thing. James Robinson writing, Scott Collins art, and it's an 80 themed horror book. Mm-hmm. Like, you're hitting all my things, but we're coming up to the end of Nightwing, and I've really been enjoying it.
Yeah. And this is the penultimate issue, right?
Yeah, because September is delayed, and then it rolls into, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, it rolls right into the new creative team. I don't know who the artist is, but Dan Waters, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, it's 2 T's in Waters. He did that Dexter story in the Super Pets book a couple of weeks ago that Todd immensely enjoyed, and I had skipped over the first time, and then I read it a week late, and I immensely enjoyed it as well. But yeah, this is the second to last issue of this run, man. And I've been enjoying it the whole time. And I can't wait to see how they wrap everything up with this. You know, I want Tom Taylor and to a lesser extent Bruno Redondo to do the old. And again, there's analogs between Nightwing and Daredevil at the 2 companies, you know?
Yep.
I want them to put Nightwing into such a situation of like, now let's see you try to write your way out of this one. Yeah. Like there was that time that they did in like the early to mid 2000s, whenever like the new creative teams would come on to Daredevil, you know?
Wait a minute. There was Daredevil before Mark Waid?
There was several people who did Daredevil before Mark Waid. Yes. I know you think that he was a wholly new created character by Mark Waid, but you would be mistaken.
Yeah, and I would also like to add for the Pool Post bit, Dick Tracy 4 did come out, Joe.
Yes, like I said it came into our store last week.
Yep, like you said. And also, I know for a fact My Bad is in stores this week. Not for us anyway, depending on what retailer it's ordered.
Now, and now this was the thing. I didn't mention it because it was on both the Lunar and Diamond lists.
Right. Yep. Drives me nuts. Because it drives me nuts. I feel like it's whether it's in my mind or it's real. I think it's creating a rift between me and you over this stuff, especially like when I put it in my email and it's not on your list and it's on mine, and it all depends on which place our retailer ordered it from, whether it's going to be so like neither of us are right and both of us are right sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no winning in this situation.
And I don't. And again, I don't think this isn't like exposing the business in any way, shape, or form. But I asked our retailer, what's up with this? And he said, like, if it's a book like Dick Tracy, just as an example, where it ships 1 week from one distribution and a separate week from the different distribution, obviously they don't know that ahead of time.
Right.
And if it's a book that is available through obviously if it's DC, he has no choice with Lunar, right?
Right.
If it's Marvel, he's got no choice with Diamond. But he actually has a choice with Diamond or Penguin. But anyway, for the indie books, sometimes he'll alternate months just to kind of, even out his order, right?
Right.
So
maybe he needs to make a cutoff too,
Right. And like 1 month he'll do My Bad from Lunar, and 1 month he'll do My Bad from Diamond. As far as he knows, they're both going to come out the same week. And that's the other thing about it is, when these books originally get solicited, it's not like the solicitation from Ahoy, let's just say, or Mad Cave says it comes out this day if you get it here, but this day if you get it there.
Right.
It just says it comes out on this day. Mm-hmm. But then when it gets closer to the actual day that it comes out, sometimes both the distribution houses have it on the same day. Sometimes they have it on 2 separate days. And I don't think it's causing a rift or a schism, but it's definitely causing confusion.
Exactly, because I don't know what to do. Yeah. And when I did the joke, it's causing a rift. Like, if that's what's going to tear this podcast asunder, so be it. But you know what I mean? Because it's like, then I feel like I have to ask at the shop. And I just like to go easy. Here's my list. I give it to the shop. I give it to you. And if My Bad is out this week at our shop, then I'm buying it. If it's out next week, I'm buying it. I just go because, like I said, I always joke, my list is made up from a different place than yours, and boom. And it just became comically, like, ridiculousness going on. And I was like, all right, I'm done with it. I'm not fighting over this anymore. And I feel like I was for some stupid reason.
Now, see, I never got it as fighting. Obviously when the first issue of My Bad Peculiar Island came out, and it was on the one list, but it wasn't on the other list.
And we didn't know the reasons back then either.
And we didn't know the reason. And again, we didn't know the reasons back then 4 months ago. We didn't know the reason.
It was the dark times of Longbox Heroes pull post,
And it was one of those deals where, like, I picked up my books and I made sure to take the picture and, put today's newspaper behind it and post it everywhere. And then you chime back that it's, AI Photoshop. And we had fun with it. Like I said, I take no offense, but it is definitely one of those things where I do see the book show up on one list one week and another list another week. I do ask our retailer, I go, hey, where are you getting it from this week? But that's the thing. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But in my brain, I build it up as Civil War, and I don't know when Longbox Heroes as a nation will heal, Joe. Brother against brother.
Never.
But anyway.
So while you're over at longboxheroes.com, of course, be sure to check out past episodes of this show, past episodes of Longbox Heroes After Dark, and of course, our current ongoing Todd and Joe Have Issues, where we are rereading all of Gail Simone's Secret Six, and everything that it trickles over, spills over, whatever's overs into. And this week, it spills over into Blackest Night and spills over into Suicide Squad number 67. Now, there had been Suicide Squads that had come out in between the cancellation of the main series and this issue, but this is the first time that it picked up the original numbering as part of the part of the Blackest Night scam, and I say scam, opportunity, where they did a series of one-shots, which was one more issue of a long canceled book to, kind of say, like, hey, these characters from this book are coming back from the dead, which means this book is coming back from the dead. Blackest Night, it's zombies with Green Lantern rings.
Because that's what I was, and I think you figured out what I was going to come at you at when you said it, the way you set it up. Because when I read the post for it, it's like, at this point, Suicide Squad in name had been out of circulation for 18 years. And I'm like, there was a 12-issue run that got cut. That was an ongoing in 2002. That was the Keith Giffen one. And then there was a mini series just 3 years before this, and I was like, oh, I wonder if, like, he knows that there was other Suicide Squad books between this one and that one. So I was doing some research, Joe, a journalism, if you will.
Right. And it's one of those things where, obviously there had been drips and drabs, and this was during a period of time where, they are called Task Force-esque, but Suicide Squad is a more sexy, eye-catching title. And it got to a point where DC was like, let's not have a book on our stands that's called Suicide.
Right.
So that's part of the reason why. But yes, the original numbering, the original series, the 12-issue, the miniseries happened, but they're not part of the numbering here. But still. So this is barely a Suicide Squad book, and it definitely is a whole Secret Six book, right?
Right.
But because it has the hook of being a Blackest Night tie-in, being an additional issue of a long canceled, long forgotten, long remembered book, Gail and John Ostrander do a really good job of introducing you, maybe a new reader who's picking up Suicide Squad because you need it in your collection, or you're picking up Blackest Night for whatever reason. And this is to get you to read not only Blackest Night, but it's also to get you to, more importantly, read Secret Six. They do a great job of introducing all the characters through narrative stuff with Black Alice as they're on the mission. And she has, like, what I guess she's writing in her diary, or she's writing a letter to her mom, or whatever it is. And she's giving the descriptors of the characters that she's on the mission with. And I thought that was a great device in this. But the real Suicide Squad stuff in this was essentially the reintroduction of the original Fiddler, who was killed on one of the original Secret Six Villains United missions from back in Villains United, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it all comes around from there, you know?
Right, and I will say, because he comes back as a Blackest Night, Black Lantern. Man, oh man, because it's been, 14 years? Oh my God, we're old, Joe. 14 years since Blackest Night. But man, oh man, those Black Lantern designs for, like, all the dead characters look so good, man. So good, because they have like a smattering of them in this issue. But I would almost say that the Fiddler's Black Lantern costume looks like way better than his original greens. But I don't know, because I just might have an affinity for black and black jerseys and stuff like that. So, but it looks so good. Like, to see the, like, Copperhead and a couple other characters, like, Deathstorm and everything. It's just so cool.
I think you and I, who had lived Blackest Night, can look back on it fondly 14 years later. Mm-hmm. But definitely at the time, it was a good story arc, but it was one of those deals where Sinestro Corps War hits, and that was very much lightning in a bottle, and not just because it was the Yellow Lantern, right? So that ends up being lightning in a bottle, and then they're like, well, how could we make this bigger?
Right.
And that's where Blackest Night comes from, and where Sinestro Corps War felt a little more organic, Blackest Night felt like a corporate mandated event.
It did. Go ahead.
And this was 14 years ago, Jeff Johns at the helm of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different time, and you certainly can judge today based on those things. But I think Blackest Night got because it was too much, too quick, and it felt like, well, we need to have it feel like this particular time period, and it needs to cross over this, and all these other things, where it's still good.
Okay. And this is, I'm going to push back.
We're going to talk about Secret Six, I promise.
But this is where we disagree, Joe, because I think Blackest Night was like, yes, was it all the things that you said? Yes. But can it be all those things and be great? Yes. And I'm not going to do this because this isn't that segment of the show where I would go down events from DC and discuss whether they're good. Like, we're not the ranking show here, but I could rank them. Blackest Night would be way high at the top of my list.
Oh yeah, I'm with you. I'm not saying it was bad.
No,
I just feel as though the general comic book populace consensus who didn't want to give it a chance from Jump Street.
Okay, fair enough. But man, oh man, all of those minis, like James Robinson, like doing like the Superman, the Batman, like those 3-issue minis that went along. Let's just say I bought everything out of this and I enjoyed 80% of it. And that's saying something. There were some stinkers in there.
Sure.
But then in like this, we come back around. We bring it back to Secret Six / Suicide Squad. Like, once again, Gail Simone does like a great job. It is a Secret Six story.
Yeah.
With a Suicide Squad backdrop, and to a lesser extent at this point, a Blackest Night backdrop, which is pretty, incredible that she pulled this off, like to do that like that layered of a thing. That Blackest Night is the little itty bitty part, and Secret Six is the big part of it.
Right, and I'm going to jokingly and say, like, juggling all of these balls, and I say it's 3 balls. It's Suicide Squad, it's Secret Six, it's Blackest Night. But Blackest Night in and of itself was like 5 balls.
Yes.
Suicide Squad in and of itself was like 2 balls, and Secret Six was another 2 balls, because there was a lot of moving pieces with everything. And to get all of those moving pieces of all of these three divergent stories, properties, arcs, whatever, and have them all fit in together seamlessly takes skill.
And I mean, I'm not going to speak for people who read this, but for me, I've already said it. I'm a fan of Blackest Night. I'm a fan of Secret Six, and I'm a huge fan of Ostrander's Suicide Squad. So this was written for me. Like I'm well, I know I'm pretty well, associated with all these titles. So it's like, oh, okay, this is nothing for me and a fun thing to go back to because I like all the product that is involved.
Yep. And they do a lot of setting up the importance of Deadshot. And I feel so much of Secret Six up to this point has been putting over Deadshot.
Mm-hmm.
And reestablishing him. We talked early on that this is like the Bane reclamation project.
Right.
But especially based on his scene in this book, Bane is completely different than the Bane that was in Nightfall, and I'd say that's for the better. Like, he has those elements of that character, but he's more three-dimensional now.
Yes.
More fleshed out, and I feel Gale is like, okay, that machine of Bane is running smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to do anything there. It's going to go. I can throw what I need into it. Ragdoll does his thing. He doesn't need a lot of work. Scandal does her thing. She don't need a lot of work. Jeanette, we'll come to her when we come to her. Deadshot has been like the focus of, like, let's say the last like 3 or 4 issues. Again, his character and getting over how much everyone else treats him as a threat, where he effectively on his surface is just a guy who shoots other people.
Right.
But he's the best guy who shoots other people.
Mm-hmm.
So anything on Deadshot before we get into the Bane Leanna scene?
No, on Deadshot, other than the fact that like he is the pivot character for both teams, which makes him very, very important. So
right. Then you have the bit where Leanna is coming to pick up Scandal for a date.
Mm-hmm.
And Bane is Scandal's father, question mark.
What are your intentions with my daughter scene, basically. And
of all the funny scenes that there have been in Secret Six up to this point, this may have been the funniest sequence.
Mm-hmm.
This was great. It was perfect. As Todd mentioned, this is every scene in every TV show, movie, whatever trope you want to say of like, what are your intentions for my daughter? But the fact that it's Bane, Vandal Savage's daughter, and an exotic dancer are your characters in the world of a comic book, right?
So turn the intensity up to a 70.
Right. And, obviously, as I mentioned before, all the stuff with Black Alice. Another great line is when she says that Catman is essentially concentrated dude.
Yes, that line cracked me up.
Oh, and I'm letting my shot be known. That's the episode title this week, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I reread that, I'm like, oh my goodness, that is hilarious.
Go ahead.
And
I'm jumping ahead of it because my second favorite line kind of deal, and it's some of that Big Todd energy, Joe, where Bronze Tiger and Catman meet up. So good. And he says, like, they're talking. He's like, we're going to go at it. He's like, there's only 2 ways for you if you stay. Hospital or the morgue if you stay. And Catman's just like, what the hell? I could use the rest. Like, either way, hospital or morgue, I'm good with how it turns out. And I'm like, my God, like I said, if this isn't the thirstiest book, it's the most action-filled book of the decade that this was coming out.
And it's not a complaint, it's a little bit of a nitpick, and it's not a nitpick for you or I. That's Bronze Tiger. I know that's Bronze Tiger. He's on the cover of the book. If you've read Secrets or Suicide Squad before, that's Bronze Tiger. Just in case there's somebody reading this book who might not have read Suicide Squad, they never say his name is Bronze Tiger in the book.
Well, and I'm blanking on what her name is. There's the one who has the dark powers. They never say her name either. You know what I mean?
The one who's on their team, Black Alice?
No, on the Suicide Squad bit. There's a woman who when they show up in the room, and she has, I can't think of what it is, but she basically goes after Lawton and Bane with like darkness powers.
Okay, yeah. So they never say her name either, and then of course Count Vertigo, of course, says his name because he's Count Vertigo. Of course, he has to.
Right.
But I feel as though, and it's as crazy as it sounds, I think a more general DC reader would be able to recognize Count Vertigo than they would Bronze Tiger.
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah. Again, the smallest of small nitpicks. It did not affect my quality of reading this book whatsoever. But yeah, just like the one with the darkness power, whose name I don't even know because I don't say it in the book. Have somebody say their name.
Right.
Just once.
I'm looking that up while you go, but go ahead.
Right. So this is, I got no other notes on this. We're back to the main Secret Six book next week with issue 17. Like I said, this is a fill-in. We talked about it's tying into Blackest Night. It's a Suicide Squad book, but we're right back to Secret Six, and we're on Secret Six until we get like a Doom Patrol thing in a couple weeks. But other than that, it's smooth sailing Ashley Remington from here on out.
And that character's name was Nightshade, and she would go on to be a big member of Shadow Pact.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Good for her.
Yes. Hey, that book got the definitive Colonel Sanders artist some checks, so I'm fine with it.
I was putting him over this weekend at DabbleCon, by the way.
Oh, were you? Good.
Yeah. I certainly was. So, hey, while you're over at longboxheroes.com, of course, go check out our store. Get shirts and pins and stickers with our fancy logo on them. Make any and all of your purchases through our eBay affiliate link. This page contains affiliate links for eBay. We may receive a small commission on purchases you make. You can use the affiliate link anytime you want to buy anything on eBay and support us at the same time.
Yeah.
But the most important way, the bestest way, my favorite way for you to support us is to sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/longboxheroes. As little as $1 a month, you're going to get all of this, and it's a lot. You're going to get 2 bonus shows from Todd and myself every month. That is Previewing the Past, where we look at 30 years ago, that month's previews catalog, and Comic Book Oddities, where we look at some of the lesser-known, maybe rightfully forgotten, spin-offs, pilots, failed attempts to make comic books into TV and movie properties, pre-Marvel Cinematic Universe. This weekend, we are recording the 1996 Cinemax original film, Vampirella, starring Roger Daltrey.
Yes, I know him.
Okay. Does any of this make any sense to you? It shouldn't, because it makes no sense to me, but we're going to review it this weekend. You're also going to get exclusive access to the soon-to-be-named network Discord. There's rooms in there for all the shows in the soon-to-be-named network. Come in and say hi. You're also going to get full scans of all the previews catalogs that we talk about on Previewing the Past. Expertly done, high-quality, professionally made scans of those previews. And the ink is almost dried on us doing this all the way up to the end of 2027.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Which is pretty cool. Then we can start working on 1990. I made a pact with Todd, either publicly or privately, but I'm going to do it again. Once I have all of 1997 in my hand, I'm not going to look at anything for 1998 until next year.
Oh, wow. I don't believe you, but okay.
Next year is 3 months away.
I still don't believe you.
All right.
Knowing you, I'll bet the under, Joe.
$5 is going to get you those 2 bonus shows 2 weeks before everyone else. It's also going to get you After Dark 2 days before everyone else, so that you can listen to the shows in the correct listening order. And we're not going to hit you over the head like we did last week with all the pricing changing that could or should be happening. If you're a Apple iOS app user, we're going to remind you once it gets toward the end of October. No use to talk about it now. We did it once. We're done. We'll cover it again come October.
Yes.
And that's it, man. We got no TV. We got no movie. We got no nothing here for at least another couple weeks.
I would like to add one thing.
Oh, okay.
If you want, you could join up for the Pigskin Pick'ems.
Thank you. Yes.
Where you could, it's simple, it's easy. You join the group, you just pick the winners head to head, no point spread, no nothing. We're filling up fast, if you will. As of right now, I have 26 rivals in the group.
Woo!
I would like more. There's rumors that someone who takes a walk down Lois Lane may be joining us, returning triumphantly, because she was on it in the past. So we'll have to see. So that may be 28. And then if you're in the sound of my voice, join up, man. It's fun, entertainment purposes only.
So yes, for sure. The more the merrier, the lot more fun it is. And if I beat you and you're a real football fan, legally you have to stop watching football.
Yes.
That's the only caveat. That's the only anything in all of this.
Yep.
So yeah, hey everyone, thank you very much for listening. This was episode 724 of Longbox Heroes. For Todd, this is Joe saying, we'll catch you all here next week.
Remember, be a faucet, not a drain.
You're listening to the soon-to-be-named network, the Lamborghini of podcast networks.
The Rob is a Longbox hero. The Rob is a Longbox hero. He gives us five stars.